said the Lions won a game.
Great Lakes State
Football.
Lake
State Football.
Dun 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 dun.
And we're a bunch of idiots, but we're back. Kory, Brett, Vince, Great Lakes State Football, episode 4. Very excited for this episode. We have another special guest, Mr. Jaleel Canty, a guy that we both played, all three of us, played against in high school. And he went on to do some big things in college, and now he's in the coaching world. And we'll be talking with him a little bit later here in this episode about his alma mater, Ferris State, as well as his coaching career and some other things in the world of football. But before we get to Jaleel, we have some topics that we are going to hit on here, obviously, with the football season kind of coming to a close in these last few weeks, going into bowl season. Not a whole lot of football going on, but we do have a few things we're going to hit on. And first thing we want to talk about is MHSAA high school football here in the state of Michigan. We have some final season rankings out from a couple different outlets. MLive and D-Zone put out their end of the year rankings post state championship games. We thought we would talk about that. They're actually pretty similar. The differences are only 2 teams between the two, so they're top 10. We're not going to go past the top 10. That would take too much time. If you want to check out those 2 lists, we'll put the links in the description on the YouTube video. But they get past top 10. We'll just kind of explore those. And then I also looked up the Max Preps rankings for the final rankings for the state of Michigan. It's kind of interesting because Max Preps uses a computer system, so it's kind of interesting to see how closely theirs matches up with human bias, with just some sports writers' opinions. So let's get into it here. Let's start with MLive. MLive's final top 10 rankings for all divisions. They have Belleville, number 1, Detroit King, number 2, Warren De La Salle, number 3, DeWitt at number 4, Grand Rapids Catholic Central 5, Rochester Adams at 6, Grand Blanc at 7, Rockford at 8, Traverse City Central at 9, and West Bloomfield at 10. Do you guys have any, Kory or Brett, any thoughts on MLive's top 10 there?
Go ahead, Brett, if you want to kick it off.
I find it a little bit interesting that DeWitt is up so high, ranked number 4. I think they had a great season. Don't get me wrong. They lost a heartbreaker, but I think it's a little bit high for DeWitt to be ranked, especially having probably the worst loss out of the top 10, quite honestly. But it's good to see a team from the Lansing area make it inside the top 5. To be honest with you, I don't ever recall seeing a Lansing area team in the top 5 at the end of the year. So shout out to Mid-Michigan, the CAC Blue. Good to see a team crack the top 5. Other than that, I think it makes a lot of sense. The really interesting to me is the teams on here that have some younger quarterbacks coming back. You have Belleville, number 1. They had a
Detroit
freshman quarterback that's coming back, Detroit King. They have a junior that's coming back next year to be a senior.
Rochester Adams.
Borderline 5-star, Rochester Adams. I recall, I think Grand Rapids Catholic Central, they have a kid that's coming back next year too. But
yeah, I think he was a junior as well, I believe.
Yeah, their starter got hurt. But nonetheless, I think they got it right. But yeah, it's just a little bit surprising to see DeWitt that high.
Yeah, just to chime in, Rockford is the one that sticks out to me the most. I mean, they had a good year. Don't get me wrong; they're good every year. But for them, they lost in the regional. Correct? They didn't play in the semi. They lost to Grand Blanc in the regional.
Correct. By 1 point on attempted 2-point conversion, 28-27.
Yeah, so I don't know if I see them in the top 10. TCC is also a little worrisome just because they got blown out. I do like Warren De La Salle over DeWitt. I think if those two were to play, it'd actually be a pretty fair game.
DeWitt blew out Warren De La Salle last year in a non-conference game. I know, obviously, 1 year separate might be different teams, but that win was down at Detroit at Wayne State's Field by DeWitt, like 30-something to 3. Warren De La Salle only managed a field goal. I think that's one reason why DeWitt's so high on both these lists. I didn't say the D zone yet, but DeWitt last year and this year, pretty much the same offense both years. The big difference from their state title team was their defense. They lost some of their linebackers and D linemen, but that DeWitt team, man, beat some really good teams. They pounded Traverse City Central, who played for a state championship. They beat some pretty good teams in the playoffs, an undefeated Mount Pleasant team. And as we just mentioned, and we talked about after the state title games with Tate Baker, that game came down to the final play of one of the final plays of the game with Detroit Kings. So I think it makes sense that they gave DeWitt some love there.
It'll be interesting to see how DeWitt comes back next year. Zim normally does a pretty good job, but he's going to recycle a lot of talent. I mean,
he's losing 3 D1 guys or 4 D1 guys?
4 D1 guys, yeah. Quarterback, elite wide receiver, elite quarterback.
And then is it Flegler who's going to Air Force?
Yeah, and there's another guy on that team going.
I thought one of their old linemen.
D1.
Yeah, I thought one of their old linemen.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they run it back next year.
So then going over the D zones list, pretty similar list. Some of the teams are different by maybe a spot. The only difference in terms of teams completely different, like not on their top 10 at all, was 2. So D zone had King number 1, Belleville number 2. So they were flip-flopped. De La Salle 3, DeWitt 4. So that's the same. They had Rochester Adams at 5. They had West Bloomfield at 6. Sterling Heights Stevenson at 7, who was not on the MLive list. Grand Blanc at 8. Grand Rapids Catholic Central at 9. And Dearborn Fordson at 10, who is not on MLive's list. So the two glaring differences, Sterling Heights Stevenson and Dearborn Fordson being on the D zones list instead of Traverse City Central and Rockford. I hesitate to justify this, but I think part of it is the D zone's putting a little bit more stock in those Oakland schools opposed to the West Side
and D1 schools.
Yep, yeah. MLive seems to be putting a little bit more stock in some of the West Sides. Well, Rockford is D1. Obviously MLive had them and D zone didn't. But I think D zone isn't given quite as much love there. Obviously, Traverse City Central, maybe rightfully so. But I was a little surprised with Dearborn Fordson and Sterling Heights Stevenson. I mean, they had solid seasons, but I didn't think either of them really showed out on a statewide level. I think both of them beat 2 teams they played in the regular season in the playoffs too, or at least one of them did. So it wasn't like they were showing out on a statewide level, beating teams from around the state. But I don't know. Again, it's all bias. It's just personal opinion, because a lot of these teams didn't play each other.
Yeah, 4 of those 10 for D zone are non-D1. So, but you even have King. I mean, King can compete with it. Warren De La Salle, they are a little bit smaller, but granted, they're a Catholic school. DeWitt played
and Grand Rapids Catholic Central's Division 5. So
is division, yeah. So they're a little offset, but Fordson, Sterling Heights, West Bloomfield. West Bloomfield has a ton of talent, especially coming back next year.
Yeah.
And same with King, same with Belleville. So you'll see a lot of these teams. Even Rochester Adams is weird. I looked it up. They have 25 seniors on that team this year. So easy to win when you have that many seniors.
That's quite a class.
Some of their talent was juniors, so that'll be interesting. Just kind of see what they come back with.
I just thought one of the most interesting things to me was having a team that didn't even win 10 games on D zone's list. Dearborn Fordson won only 9 games, which they play a lot of tough competition, but I just thought that was interesting. There's a lot of teams who won 10 or more games. I was kind of surprised Guam Westphalia didn't get a little bit more love. They are just off the top 10 for the D zones. I don't remember how far from MLive. But I was going to go over with you guys here Max Preps really quick. Guam Westphalia is number 15 on Max Preps rankings. So, Brett, do you want to add anything?
Tough, man. They're so small.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. It is tough to compare.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to me having Dearborn Fordson on the list. Dearborn Fordson plays in, I mean, it's a tough conference down there. I don't care if
absolutely
it's East-West. It's a tough conference. They only lost to Belleville by 2 this year. And we all know how good of a team Belleville is. They
who then crushed Adams in the state title.
Right. So, I mean, like we know, you can't compare games. But I think they're giving Dearborn Fordson a little bit of respect for the way they played most of their games this year. Detroit King, I think it makes sense that they're number one for the D zone. Detroit King probably played one of the toughest non-conference schedules out of everybody on that list. So they went out of state for their conference schedules. They played Carmel, team down in Indiana. Carmel's
crazy finish, Hail Mary finish.
Yeah, isn't Carmel massive too?
Carmel's Carmel's one of the biggest high schools in Indiana, located just north of Indianapolis. They're well known for their football team. They're a dynasty around there. I would probably compare it to probably a King in the state of Michigan, but it's more of a suburban school. But then they also played a team out of Ohio, Archbishop Moeller, which is another very familiar name.
That's like a really well-known Midwest school. I mean, they're typically a team that plays a lot of the Detroit Catholic schools, and they're very good, very, very good.
And they ended up, I'm not sure, I think they played in the state championship game in Ohio. They played 5 games in the playoffs and they lost by 1 point, and they're one of the bigger divisions in Ohio. So I think they gave a lot of respect to King for their non-conference schedule, which I would too. I would have King number 1. Bevel is impressive, but I think King would beat him in a head-to-head matchup.
So yeah, just real quick, I just want to read you guys the max preps. And so the max preps, this isn't like a voting or a ranking. It's a computer system. I'm sure you guys know this, but they determine it based on school size and strength of schedule and strength of wins. So the teams that they're beating, how big are they? How many wins do those teams have? So it's kind of interesting to see how a computer ranks some of these teams in the state. And actually, it's pretty close to D-Zone MLive's list. Number 1 for max preps is De La Salle. Number 2 is Belleville. Number 3 is King. Number 4 is Grand Rapids Catholic Central. 5 is DeWitt. 6 is Rochester Adams. 7, Traverse City Central. 8 is Chelsea. 9 is Unity Christian. And 10 is Rockford. So they gave the computer rankings gave some love to Chelsea and Unity Christian for their strength of schedule and wins. Unity
Christian was a one-off. We can all,
I don't know, man. Their season was pretty impressive.
No. I'm saying a one-off from the standpoint of they should be ranked probably in the top 5, but they just had a colossal meltdown versus Chelsea. I don't know.
Oh yeah. You're saying like they should have won. They probably should have been 14. They should have been 14. Oh yeah. They were up by what? 28 points, 45-17.
They're still a better team than Chelsea, in my opinion.
I think so. They just started turning the ball over, just fumbling the ball.
Pooped.
Wasn't even
kneecap.
They weren't even like forced turnovers. Like literally a couple of those fumbles, it was bad handoffs in the backfield. Like it wasn't even really anything Chelsea did. I mean, give Chelsea credit for how they play on offense in that second half, but Unity Christian just fell apart. It's a very unfortunate ending for them for the season they had, but thought that was interesting how close the top 10 was for the computers compared to some sports writers. Very interesting.
Should have compared that to the preseason rankings.
So a team to watch
unchanged.
A team to watch heading into next year is Saline. They've had some previous success, and I was looking at the all-state list, and their quarterback is a sophomore, looks the part, getting a ton of Power 5 love. CJ Carr. So keep a lookout for them next year.
You know who his grandpa is?
Lloyd.
Yes.
So he's related to McCartney. Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think it's like a stepson or something.
Yeah, McCartney is, yeah. So
all right, so let's go ahead and move on here from high school football talk, and we're going to get into NCAA college football for a little bit. Let's talk postseason awards. Kind of going to keep our focus here with Great Lakes State football, meaning Michigan State. Obviously, the Heisman was kind of big news this past week here. Aiden Hutchinson finished second. He's only the third defensive player ever to finish runner-up for the Heisman, which is pretty cool distinction for University of Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson. And then
it wasn't even close.
No. I wasn't gonna say that, but my Michigan fans here brought it up. Obviously, the separation was pretty big, even though he finished second. Do you guys want to touch on the Heisman here a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I can start. First off, credit to Aiden and his trajectory. A lot of people I don't realize, I don't pay attention to football, and even last year with COVID and Michigan not doing very well, Aiden got hurt. He didn't even finish the season last year.
I did not actually. I think I remember that. I didn't think about that though.
Broke his ankle.
Yeah, he broke his ankle.
Did he have surgery?
He did, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm not sure how long he was out. I think he was able to come back just in time for spring ball. But he bet on himself because he wouldn't have been able to try out for the NFL. He still has some good tape out, and he could have ended up probably being a second round pick. I don't think he would have cracked the first round had he gone last year. But like everyone on Michigan did this year, coaches included, they bet on themselves. And he is 100% deserving of his runner-up award in that Heisman. I mean, what he means to this Michigan team, I can't even think of a player in my relevant Michigan history of like I would say 15 years is when I can remember that meant as much to their team that Aiden does. I mean, he's the type of guy that I hope the Lions draft him because he's a locker room guy. His head is on straight. His motor never stops when he's on the field between the hashes. Like he is a guy you want to build your team around. So I'm really glad to see that he got second place. I think everybody knew going in Bryce Love was going to get it just based off that last possession against Auburn and that in the Iron Bowl.
I'm going to prelude this with the fact that I am a Michigan State fan, but I'm going to ask this question as just a general football fan. I'm not trying to like throw shade or like be negative because I have. As a Michigan State fan, Michigan had a hell of a season. Aiden Hutchinson is a hell of a player. What do you guys, as Michigan fans, genuinely think about the fact that he was a Heisman finalist, but wasn't he not even a finalist for the Defensive Player of the Year award?
I think it's bogus. I mean, the problem is
I genuinely just want to know what you guys think about it.
Defensive Player of the Year tends to kind of be like the Heisman situation. It's a linebacker. Or it's somebody with some crazy stats of like 200 tackles. And when you're a defensive end of his caliber, people aren't running at you. People are running away from you. They're chip blocking you every play. They're zoning away. They're scheming against you because guess what? You can make a play every single play. So I just think Defensive Player of the Years, I think it's similar to the Heisman. It's just kind of bogus. Who won it? I don't even know.
Did Anderson from Alabama win it? I honestly did not check and see.
Rightfully so. Outside linebacker.
Anderson had a hell of a season too.
Yeah, played on the line.
And this was something we talked about last week with Chris Castellani, and when we talked Heisman talk, is
I don't know.
It was kind of interesting that Anderson didn't get any looks.
They're trying to spread the love in football. I mean, Harbaugh didn't win the Big Ten Coach of the Year, but he wins the AP National Coach of the Year. I mean, they spread it around. They don't want the same person win every award.
Which, yeah, I would definitely agree with that sentiment. And I also think that's cool. I think that should be the case. I think more players and coaches should be highlighted. And it's funny that you bring that up because that's something I've thought about is the fact that while Mel Tucker had a great year, I think looking at the whole body of work, I think even though Jim Harbaugh lost to Mel Tucker for a second straight year, that this is an impressive season for Michigan and a pretty monumental season for the program as a whole. So I think Jim Harbaugh is absolutely deserving of a National Coach of the Year award, if not more than one from different outlets. But I also think Mel Tucker is deserving a Big Ten Coach of the Year award because I think he had way lower expectations than Jim Harbaugh did coming into the season. So I think it's cool that they both got to win, different Coach of the Year awards. Kind of going into that, we talked about it last week. I'm still kind of disappointed that Kenneth Walker didn't get any love. I think they said he finished 6th in the voting. We talked about this with Chris last week. I don't know why 8 or 10 guys don't go. You have how many hundreds of college football players, and you can't have like 8 or 10 guys sit in the auditorium for the finalists of Heisman.
First team AP All-American too.
He was first team All-American. He was the Doak Walker Award and the Walter Camp Award winner. First time in Michigan State history for both those awards.
He didn't lead. So I think K9 was deserving. I will say he didn't lead the nation in rushing. He led it, and he led a few other stats, obscure stats, like I think yards after contact and some other things like that. I do think he was rightfully picked. My argument for K9 being a Heisman candidate was he changed the trajectory of Michigan State. I mean, like we talked about, they're a 6-win team without him, and they're a 10-win team with him.
For sure. Absolutely.
One other thing I would say about the Coach of the Year stuff and all that is Michigan is legitimately a call and a couple blunders away from beating Michigan State and being undefeated. And I
Dude,
think
don't bring up one call.
No, I said a call and some blunders. I didn't say just a call. But I'm saying like we stop a couple runs that don't get busted for touchdowns. I mean, 5 touchdowns in a game. Even Haskins' 5 touchdowns against Ohio State.
Yes, bring up plays. Don't bring up refs.
I said blunders. Did I stutter? But even Haskins' 5 touchdowns against Ohio State, that shouldn't happen. Like a team shouldn't give up 5 rushing touchdowns.
Michigan gave up 5 rushing touchdowns, Kenneth Walker.
That's what I'm talking about, jackass. So I'm saying the calls, that one call, the sack strip touchdown, and not stopping Kenneth Walker, like we're undefeated. So I don't know.
Dude, you can't bring up that call, man. They gave up a 4th down. They were down up by 16 points in the third quarter and gave up a 4th
24.
and 4.
They're up 24 if they had a strip sack.
How are they up 24?
All right.
Still got a field goal. It'd be a 4-point. It's a 4-point differential. They still got 3 points.
No one wants to listen to this. I'm going to get this train back.
Everyone wants to listen to the banter. I'm telling you, this is what they want to hear, baby.
Vince, I'm gonna answer your question. Your question was, why don't they send all 8 people to the Heisman ceremony?
No, not all 8. Why? I mean, we talked about this with Chris last week. I think 4 people is stupid. I think it should be. And obviously, I'm coming from a biased place with wanting Kenneth Walker there, but I think every year, regardless of a Michigan State player being a nominee, why is it only 4 guys? Why can't you have more? I think it'd just be cooler to highlight more schools and more players in general at that award ceremony.
Why at the Olympics are there only 3 people that stand on the podium when everyone's deserving of an award?
The Olympics has hundreds and hundreds of events.
I will say
hundreds of
argument
events.
I would say is that
still those people won so many tournaments and races.
Hutchinson.
You're talking about hundreds of sports. We're talking about one game. The Olympics has hundreds of sports.
I know. All I'm saying is
apples to oranges.
Why? If you know you know who's going to win the Heisman with 3 people going, why send 8? What's the difference?
So here's my only argument, really quick. Hutchinson in second place. Hutchinson in second place had more votes than all the other Heisman finalists and nominees combined, and he still lost to Bryce Young by 672 votes. So realistically, even past like 4th, anything past 4th is really irrelevant compared to second, 3rd, and 4th were irrelevant.
I must be a fan of participation trophies.
You know I'm not. You
use your armor, Vince.
You know I'm not. You know that is the last thing I'm a fan of. This is something that I think you, maybe Chris brought it up last week, that I'm wondering if they go off of a minimum number of votes is the only thing I can justify for their reasoning, is if you don't receive a certain number of votes, then you don't go. But I don't know. I just don't see what's wrong with highlighting more players and more programs than 4 guys, because you both have made the argument that this ceremony and this award is no longer highlighting the greatest player in college football. There are definitely more than 4 guys who are worthy of being named the greatest player in college football every year. I mean, let's be honest. You really think those are the only 4 guys that were difference makers for their teams this year in Division I college football?
No,
I would imagine you would not agree with that.
I don't. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I don't think that. First off, did either of you watch the Heisman Trophy ceremony? Because I watched because nobody cares about it. Honestly,
yeah.
they just want to see who wins, because the problem isn't how many people are invited. The problem is because everyone knows it's going to the quarterback with the best numbers. It's just how it is, and there's no intrigue.
Yep.
And that's what the problem is. And if it was how it used to be back in the day, where there was legitimately 5 people that could win it, then yeah, I would love to see him bring 5 or 6 people. But
I want to see defensive players win it. But
but I mean, who cares? Because it's over before it even starts.
How about the media trashing Alabama for 9 weeks, and then they beat Auburn in triple overtime and beat Georgia, and then they just jerk them off the last 2 seasons, and then now they're going to win the national title, and they got the Heisman winner, and it's like, all right, guys, that's freaking sweet. We just were pooting on them for 9 weeks, and now they're Alabama again.
It's like your ex-girlfriend that comes back to you. You hate her because she did something that pissed you off, and then she comes back and makes you happy, and you love her again.
All right, let's move on from this one.
All right, we're going to move on here to let's talk a little bowl game news. Obviously, we got bowl games starting up here very soon this Friday, December 17th. Bowl games kick off, and two high-profile bowl games here in the state of Michigan. Obviously, University of Michigan will be playing Georgia in the playoffs, college football playoff. Michigan State in the New Year's Six Bowl against Pittsburgh in the Peach Bowl. Bigger news, honestly, I mean, you guys might disagree with me, but I think it's kind of bigger news that as of right now, it's still up in the air whether Kenneth Walker and Kenny Pickett will play.
Sounds like neither will.
If neither of them play, what a boring bowl game that probably nobody will watch. I mean, I will still watch it. I'm sure hardcore fans of both teams will still watch. But in terms of national appeal, the casual fan, who's going to watch that game? I mean, you're talking about one of the best running backs and one of the best quarterbacks going against each other in a bowl game, and now neither of them may play. Although
it's not a high market team either.
Although, yes, I agree. But although this is an interesting news story, I don't know if you guys saw this. Pickett announced he's going to play. He accepted an offer to play in the Senior Bowl. Why would you play in the Senior Bowl over playing in a high-profile New Year's Six Bowl against a quality opponent in Michigan State? I would imagine the argument is to showcase for the NFL, but don't you think having a great game against an opponent like Michigan State would be a better statement than playing in a Senior Bowl?
No, I don't think so. And the reason why is because at the Senior Bowl, he's going to be playing the best senior defensive backs in the nation. Whereas if against Michigan State, Vince, you've even admitted Michigan State's secondary is not good. So
he's going to have 800 yards passing against Michigan State.
And it's been a while since I watched the Senior Bowl, but I hardly ever hear of quarterbacks or anyone really getting injured in the Senior Bowl. I think it's a pretty clean
until now
game. Yeah.
There's the knock on wood. I mean, I agree with what you're saying in like the idea of it, but at the same time, couldn't you also make the argument that if he has a really good game against a really good team, opposed to just a hodgepodge of players that have gotten together within a week or a couple weeks? I mean, so I get what you're saying,
more of a scouting thing.
No, I know 100% what it is. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, and I'm coming from a little bit of a biased standpoint here as a Michigan State fan, but I just don't see. I don't know. I do and I don't see the upside and the positives and negatives picking between these two bowl games, but I don't know. Part of me is a biased Michigan State fan. I'd like to see these two go against each other, but as of today, I looked it up earlier today. They still neither of them have confirmed nor denied if they'll be playing. So
I have a solution to this problem.
What's your solution, Bart?
Expand the playoff.
Yes, Brett, give it to me, baby.
They released some footage of Michigan State's practice, and K9 was not spotted practicing. Just a heads up.
Well, he's hurt.
He also had an ankle injury, my dude.
That was 2 weeks ago,
but I agree, Brett.
3 weeks ago, actually.
I agree that if we think about every other, we've talked about this before, but I love bringing it up because I think it's important. Think about every other level of every other level of football. The postseason for every other level of football revolves around a playoff system going to a national title where the postseason matters and you're playing for a national championship. These bowl games mean nothing. Who gives a fuck who wins the Peach Bowl? It doesn't mean anything. PS5. It's not a national championship.
They've really never meaned anything.
Never.
And the big 100% things.
Correct. Never.
But it's interesting that I would say in the last 6 or 7 years we start to see people opt out, whereas I don't blame them seeing that as a child, but it makes a lot of sense.
I don't blame them.
It's been huge since Jake Butt literally ruined his NFL career with playing in one. So
yeah,
I mean, do you blame people? Do you blame people? What the hell do those bowl games mean? They don't mean anything. They don't mean anything. I mean, you sit around,
but then again, they could start sitting out late games in a season. I mean, if I was Kenneth Walker,
that's an interesting point.
Michigan State had 3 games left, and we only won 4 games.
The only argument I would make for that is you are committed to your season. right?
Mhm.
So what is that? How does that reflect upon for the NFL guys who are watching you? You're just going to sit out from the regular season. But I think even the NFL would agree. Those bowl games are so stupid. I mean, you got to think the majority of those teams sit around for a month, 3 to 4 weeks doing nothing other than practicing, lifting weights, just waiting until the game happens. And the game, when they play it, what does it mean? Oh, you played in the Cheez-It Bowl. Fucking sweet, bro.
Duke Mayo Bowl.
You played in the Duke Mayo. You played in the campingworld.com bowl. Congratulations. Here's your trophy with a canoe on the top.
The Fleshlight
Here's a trophy.
Bowl.
Here's a trophy
We're making
with
our
a
own
bowl
bowl.
of Cheez-Its, the Fleshlight Bowl. This podcast has now become NC-17 rated because Kory's comments. I apologize.
The Fleshlight Bowl. Don't lose your grip.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, let's move on. We're on a tirade again.
All right. Do you guys have any other comments here? Did you guys want to add anything about Michigan and Georgia? Georgia's losing their defensive coordinator is kind of the big news going into the bowl game, the playoff game.
Let's save it for another week.
Okay, we can talk about that later.
Say he was in Eugene Tuesday.
Eugene.
Monday. So
Wow.
Eugene.
That sounds pretty sexual. He was in Eugene.
Brett,
Eugene's
you're
a
fired.
pretty cute guy. Now we're talking about sex and fleshlights on this. So
All right, we gotta move on. This is just getting out of control here. All right. The last topic we're going to talk about here before we move on to our guest, who we're very excited to have on, Mr. Jaleel Canty. We're going to talk about Detroit Lions, our in-house Lions fanatic, Kory Schraben. Would you like to kick off the miserable, after having an amazing last-second win against the Vikings, the Lions did not have a great performance against the Denver Broncos in Mile High Stadium. How you feeling?
Yeah, tough week for the Lions. 23 on the injury report heading into Sunday. Pulled up 7 practice players who suited up. Their starting running back, Craig Reynolds, who played at Kutztown, had 0 D1 offers. He was their starting running back. And he had 11 rushes for 83 yards. So there was some positive in this. I mean, we had Pat Stafford for forever who couldn't get a 100-yard rusher. And we've got Craig Reynolds off the practice squad rushing for practically 100 yards. So, but no, the Lions sucked this week in Denver, but Denver's not bad. They were 500. They were 6-6 heading into the game.
They had a lot to play for too, with DT passing away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
They were fired.
That opening memorial was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
They celebrated every pretty much defensive turnover, putting the ball on the 88 in the end zone.
That was cool.
And they stepped on it.
Yeah,
I didn't understand that.
Shit. Yeah, I didn't get it either. But no, the offense continued to struggle. They played a rookie at center, which was pretty funny to watch. I don't know if you guys watched the game, but
I watched some of it. It's just so hard for me to watch that team at this point.
He got his welcome to the NFL play like 16 times in that game. So, but no, and then the defense finally collapsed. So nothing new. The Lions suck again. We suck again. We're gonna
we suck again. There was some key turnovers in that game too from the Lions, but I just keep paving our way to that number 1 pick, Aiden Hutchinson.
It's damn near solidified.
4 wins, 4 losses away.
Yep.
All right. Well, do you guys have anything else to add on our lie downs? Do we want to make projections here on the next game?
No projections because we're gonna lose. I think we play Arizona, correct?
They are home. They're home against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
At 1:00 this Sunday. That's a tough. We mentioned this last week. They have a tough remaining schedule.
Yeah, they lost that. Some sad news though. We did lose Jerry Jacobs, who was I don't know if he was undrafted or late draft. I think he was undrafted actually. Jerry Jacobs tore his ACL. He's out for the remainder of the year, which kind of sucks because he was a young talent that we just got lucky on, and he's been a Bulldog. So, yeah.
All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here for the first portion of the podcast and move on to our guest, Mr. Jaleel Canty. We're going to have a great conversation with him coming up here. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening, and go green.
Where my dogs at?
Go Chargers.